Welcome back to Kuma English Listening Hub. In today's episode, we are slipping off our shoes, stepping onto tatami mats, and entering a world that moves at a very different pace. We are going inside a Japanese Ryokan, a traditional inn where hospitality is not simply a service, but a carefully choreographed ritual. If you've ever imagined Japan as neon lights, bullet trains, and bustling crossings, a Ryokan is almost the opposite. Understated, hushed, and meticulously ordered. It is, in many ways, the distilled essence of Japanese hospitality, and a fascinating window into how a culture understands comfort, respect, and stillness. So, make yourself comfortable, perhaps put the kettle on, and let's explore how a night in a ryokan quietly rewires the way you think about travel. First, what is a ryokan? A ryokan is a traditional Japanese inn, usually with tatami-matted rooms, sliding paper doors, communal hot baths, and elaborate meals served in your room or in a dedicated dining hall. Many are family-run, some for generations, and quite a few are tucked away in mountain valleys, on the edge of hot spring towns, or beside rivers. At first glance, you might be forgiven for thinking that very little is happening. It's all quite subdued. Soft lighting, muted colors, the faint sound of water somewhere in the background. But underneath that tranquility is a remarkably complex system of etiquette, timing, and unspoken expectations. In a sense, staying in a ryokan is less like booking a hotel, and more like being temporarily adopted into someone else's carefully maintained household. Arrival. Shoes off, self-awareness on the first moment of cultural negotiation comes at the entrance. You slide open the door, step into the genkan, or entryway, and immediately have to make a decision about your shoes. In a ryokan, you don't really get a second chance at that. Shoes stay on the lower level. Slippers go on your feet. And if you stride in with your trainers across the polished floor, you will be, very politely, redirected. For many visitors, this is the instant when they realize that staying in a ryokan is not simply an aesthetic choice. It's behavioral. You are expected to tune in. A member of staff, often in a neat kimono or immaculate uniform, appears almost soundlessly. They bow. They take your luggage as if it's featherlight, regardless of how much you've overpacked. And from that point on, you're gently shepherded through a sequence of rituals designed to make you feel, if not exactly at home, then at least properly looked after. The choreography of welcome, you're shown to your room. The corridor is lined with shoji screens and soft, almost conspiratorial lighting. Your host walks slightly ahead, turns at corners so you don't get lost, and slides open your door with a fluid movement that makes your own attempts look rather clumsy. Inside, the room is disarmingly bare. Tatami mats, a low table, cushions on the floor, a recessed alcove with a single scroll or flower arrangement. No bed, no armchair, no clutter. For many Western guests, especially those accustomed to big, plush hotel rooms, the first reaction is often a momentary sense of panic. Where is everything? Is this it? Have I paid all this money for minimalism? But of course, the room is not empty. It's simply in its daytime configuration. Your futon, duvet, and pillows are all packed away in a cupboard, waiting for nightfall when staff will return, almost like stagehands, to transform the space. Your host kneels by the low table, and you awkwardly do the same, trying not to look too knackered after your journey. They place a small tray in front of you, with a teapot, exquisite tiny cups, a couple of seasonal sweets. The message is clear. Before anything else, sit, breathe, and drink some tea. The unspoken contract of omotenashi. Underlying all of this is the Japanese concept of omotenashi, often translated into English as hospitality, but actually something more demanding. It's the idea that the host anticipates the guest's needs before they are articulated. Done well, it looks effortless. In reality, it is the product of training, observation, and very often generations of accumulated know-how. In a ryokan, omotenashi is everywhere. Your luggage appears in your room without you noticing how it got there. A towel rack is adjusted slightly because the staff have clocked that you're left-handed. A second pillow appears after the first night because someone has noticed how you arranged your futon. From a British perspective, used to a slightly more hands-off approach in many hotels, this level of attention can feel simultaneously luxurious and faintly unnerving. There's a sense that you are being watched, but in a benign, almost caring way. You quickly realize that saying, "Oh, I'm fine, don't worry," is almost beside the point. The worrying has already been done on your behalf. Bathing is a social ritual. If the room is the heart of the ryokan, the bath is its soul. Many ryokan are built around onsen, natural hot springs that bubble up from volcanic underground sources. Even those without genuine onsen will usually have communal baths separated by gender, where steaming water is the main event. For the uninitiated, the etiquette of Japanese bathing can be a minefield. You must wash thoroughly before entering the communal bath. You sit on a little stool, soap yourself meticulously, rinse everything off, and only then do you sink into the shared pool of hot water. Swimwear is out of the question. Tattoos can still be contentious. The little modesty towel you carry with you is never, under any circumstances, to be dipped into the water. The first time you walk into an onsen area, clutching that small towel, acutely aware of your own nakedness and your foreignness, you may well think, this was a terrible idea. But give it 5 minutes. Once you have eased yourself into the water and your muscles start to relax, you begin to understand why so many Japanese people are so keen on this ritual. What's striking is the atmosphere. It's not a spa in the Western, slightly indulgent sense. It's more communal, more matter-of-fact. People are soaking, chatting softly, staring into the middle distance. There's a quiet democracy to it. Your job title and social status are, for the duration of your bath, completely irrelevant. For many visitors, this is the moment when a ryokan stay stops being merely novel and becomes genuinely transformative. You emerge, skin tingling, head clear, and pad back along the corridor in your yukata or cotton robe, feeling oddly reset. Dinner. Theater on a tray. If the bath is the soul of the ryokan, dinner is its grand performance. Forget the idea of quickly grabbing a bite to eat. At a traditional ryokan, dinner is a multi-course Kaiseki-style affair, served either in your room or in a dedicated dining space, and it can easily last 2 hours. The meal arrives in waves. Lacquered trays, tiny bowls, dishes that look as though they've been curated by an art gallery. Each component is seasonal, local, and often presented with a level of precision that makes you slightly nervous about disturbing it with your chopsticks. You might be served sashimi on a bed of ice shaped like the nearby mountain range, or grilled riverfish angled to suggest it's still leaping upstream. A lid is lifted and a fragrant plume of steam escapes as though on cue. The visual and olfactory choreography is spot on. From a linguistic perspective, the vocabulary associated with this kind of meal is fascinating. Words for seasonal markers, specific methods of cutting vegetables, poetic names for dishes that reference classical literature or local legends. It's a reminder that food in this context is a cultural text you are meant to read as much as taste. Of course, if you're jet-lagged and a bit bleary, you might be forgiven for thinking, "Blimey, there is an awful lot of crockery to get through." But as you settle into the rhythm of it, you realize the meal is not supposed to be rushed. The gaps between courses are intentional breathing spaces. You're meant to talk, to reflect, to notice details. And then, almost without your noticing, the trays disappear, the table is cleared, and the room is readied for its next act. From sitting room to bedroom, while you're at dinner or in the bath, staff slip quietly into your room and perform a kind of domestic magic trick. The low table is moved to one side. Futons are laid out on the tatami with military precision. Mattress, duvet, pillows, all fluffed and aligned. The lighting is adjusted. Perhaps a small sweet is left on your pillow. Or the scroll in the alcove is changed to something more nocturnal. Returning to your room can be a surprisingly moving moment. The transformation is not dramatic in the conventional sense, it's subtle, but it feels almost ceremonial. The message is clear. Now is the time for rest. There is a curious intimacy to this. In many Western hotels, you might hang the "Do Not Disturb" sign and take a dim view of anyone entering your space. In a ryokan, you implicitly accept that your room is porous. It is yours, but also very much part of a larger, shared rhythm of the building. For some guests, this can feel like a loss of privacy. For others, it's oddly comforting. Someone else has made sure your bed is sorted. You are being gently nudged along a well-worn path from arrival to rest to departure. The morning after, rice, fish, and reflection, morning in a ryokan has its own rituals. You may wake to the faint creak of floorboards as breakfast is prepared somewhere nearby. Sliding open your window, you might see mist over the river, steam rising from outdoor baths, or simply the quiet geometry of a Japanese garden. Breakfast is rarely an afterthought. In many ryokan, it is every bit as intricate as dinner. Grilled fish, miso soup, pickles, steamed rice, perhaps a perfectly rolled omelet. If you're used to a croissant and a coffee, the idea of salted fish at 8 in the morning might feel like a bridge too far. But it's worth embracing, if only for the novelty of it. As you eat, you might find yourself reflecting on how differently time has operated during your stay. There has been a structure, certainly, but not the frantic, hyper-scheduled structure of everyday working life. Instead, there's been a gentle, almost pastoral rhythm. Bathe, eat, rest, repeat. Ryokan in the modern world. Of course, not all ryokan are timeless sanctuaries. Some are experimenting, blending traditional aesthetics with modern conveniences, Wi-Fi, espresso machines, even co-working spaces. Others are quite unabashedly old-fashioned, their creaking floors and slightly drafty corridors very much part of the charm. Ryokan owners today face a series of dilemmas. How do you attract international guests without diluting the experience? How do you explain complex etiquette without making visitors feel as though they're sitting an exam? And, crucially, how do you compete with global hotel chains and slick boutique properties without losing your soul? Some have leaned into storytelling, framing their ryokan as guardians of local history. Others have tightened their focus, positioning themselves as retreats for overworked city dwellers in search of silence and hot water. For language learners and culturally curious travelers, this tension between preservation and adaptation is fascinating. When you stay in a ryokan, you are not just paying for a bed and 2 meals. You are participating, however briefly, in a living tradition trying to navigate a very modern world. What a ryokan stay teaches you about travel, so why does all of this matter? Beyond the fact that it's rather pleasant to spend a night somewhere with futons and hot baths. Firstly, a ryokan forces you to confront your own habits. If you're the sort of traveler who barrels into a hotel room, flings your suitcase on the bed, and immediately hunts for the nearest plug socket, a ryokan gently but firmly disrupts that. You cannot storm around in your shoes. You cannot demand breakfast at noon. You cannot treat the space as though it were a private extension of your living room. Instead, you're invited to adapt yourself to the place, rather than bending the place to your preferences. For many of us, used to a travel industry that prides itself on flexibility and personalization, this is quite a shift. Secondly, a ryokan stay highlights how deeply cultural values can be embedded in everyday routines. Ideas about modesty, cleanliness, hierarchy, nature, time, all of these are, quite literally, felt on your skin as you bathe, tasted in your mouth as you eat, and heard in your ears as you move through quiet corridors. Finally, from a linguistic and intercultural perspective, it is a lesson in communication without words. Much of what happens in a ryokan is conveyed through gesture, timing, and shared assumptions. You learn to watch how others move, when they bow, how they arrange slippers at the door. You become more attentive, less reliant on explicit instructions. For learners of English, you might be thinking, fair enough, this is all very Japanese. What has it got to do with me? But the deeper skills you practice while navigating a ryokan observation, adaptability, reading context, managing mild embarrassment are exactly the same skills that help you operate in English-speaking environments at a high level. Bringing it back to you, as we draw this episode to a close, consider how you might apply the spirit of a Ryokan to your own learning. Could you create small rituals around your study time that make it feel less like a chore and more like a deliberate, almost ceremonial act? Perhaps always making a proper cup of tea before you listen to an episode. Or tidying your desk so that, like a tatami room, your space is empty enough for your attention to settle. Could you adopt a more observant stance when you watch British television or listen to English podcasts, noticing not just what is said, but how it's said when people pause? Which expressions soften disagreement? Which idioms make an argument sound more playful than confrontational? And perhaps, next time you travel, you might consider choosing an accommodation experience that asks something of you, that invites you to adjust, to feel slightly off balance at first, and then to find a new equilibrium. Because that, in the end, is what a Ryokan offers. A gentle, beautifully structured way to step outside your normal patterns and to return, not dramatically transformed, but subtly recalibrated. If you ever have the chance to stay in one, go with an open mind, a willingness to get things slightly wrong at first, and a genuine curiosity about why things are done the way they are. You'll come away not only with a few good stories, but also with a deeper appreciation of how spaces, rituals, and language work together to create a sense of belonging. And if you don't, well, at least now you have the vocabulary and the cultural framework to imagine it. Thanks for listening to Kuma English Listening Hub. Until next time, take care, keep your curiosity switched on, and remember, sometimes the quietest experiences are the ones that stay with you the longest.